Hello everybody and welcome. Today we're going to make an Italian rice staple. It traces its history back thousands of years, and when I first started cooking, it was one of my favorite dishes to prepare for family and friends. That's right, it's the Northern Italian classic. We're going to make risotto. In traditional Italian kitchens, risotto is prepared to be eaten as a first course, then followed by a main. So typically the proportion size, just like pasta, are going to be smaller when it's traditionally prepared. We're going to take that tradition and we're going to add a couple of things to it to make it more of a main course today, but I am still going to be cooking for two, so if you want to cook for more, go ahead and multiply this recipe accordingly. Now, in terms of the food or the ingredients that you're gonna need to get started, today we have 1 onion, 1 cup of arborio rice, 2 garlic cloves, a sprig of rosemary, a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, olive oil, a dry white wine. I also have some asparagus and some shrimp that we'll be adding to the top of the risotto. So risotto is a rice dish, but unlike other rice dishes, you do not wanna wash your grains before you cook them. And the reason being, we're really relying on the grains to do a lot of the heavy lifting for this dish, and it's going to create that gravy with the natural starches that are already within the rice. Also, the way that we prepare it is very important. So you really need to set aside an entire 30 minutes because you're gonna be stirring the pot constantly. That stirring action when we're preparing the risotto is going to make the kernels kind of lose their starches as they're rubbing up against one another and then create that sauce. It's a fascinating dish when you think about it because it's very simple ingredients, but it's the preparation of those ingredients that then yields this fantastic result. I encourage you to just start off with a very basic traditional risotto recipe and then add to it as you go just to pair it with flavors that you enjoy. For today, we're mostly just gonna be over on the stovetop. Oh, I forgot to mention, you also need a stock that you're going to cook the rice in. I'm using a chicken stock. I highly recommend using a stock that you have created, whether it be vegetable chicken or another type of stock. If you wanna see how we made our chicken stock, there's a video right up here that you can watch at your convenience. Before we start throwing all these raw ingredients into a pan, let's prepare a couple of them real quick. Now for the onion, what I want to do, I'm not going to use the whole onion for this. I'm only going to use half for 1 cup of arborio rice. So I'm going to dice up this yellow onion. Half a diced onion. The next is going to be preparing our garlic. We have 2 cloves. I'm gonna prepare each differently. One we're gonna mince, the other we're gonna finely slice. This guy that's finely sliced is gonna go with the garlic. This is gonna go with the risotto. And I wanna make sure that I'm preparing everything ahead of time because once we start cooking the risotto, I'm really not gonna have the time to come over and start chopping up some garlic or anything. So just go ahead and make sure that you have it all prepared. Okay, that's the major housekeeping out of the way. Let's jump back over here over to Pan Cam and let's make some risotto. Welcome to Pan Cam. Now your first order of business should be to warm up your stock. For my 1 cup of arborio rice, I'm going to warm up about 4 cups of stock. I know that's gonna be too much, but it's better to have too much than not enough. You wanna make sure that it is at a simmer because you wanna be adding hot stock to your risotto when it is time. All right, now for our pan. Pan has been kind of heating up on a low heat. Just wanna make sure that the pan's nice and warm before we add our onions to it. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil, and then I'm gonna add the onions first, followed by the garlic. Now I want these to cook down for about 4 to 5 minutes, but I want to be very careful not to burn it or really to brown these. I just want them to get nice and sweat all the way through. About 3 minutes in, I'm going to add my minced garlic clove. I currently have the flame at a medium-low. Of course, all stovetops are going to be different, and yours might be hotter or colder. The most important thing is that you're not getting any color on your vegetables as you cook them down. 5 minutes in, our onions are starting to become translucent. I want to go ahead and add our arborio rice, and we're going to toast it for about 3 to 4 minutes. All right, so we're about 4 minutes in toasting the risotto, and we're starting to get, if it sits too long, it's starting to pop, which is a very good sign. It is nice and toasted and looks fantastic. We are not getting that much coloring, which is great. You do want to make sure that you're stirring the whole time during this process, just to make sure that you're not going to get any color. This is a pretty vital stage. I also went ahead and I moved our stock a little bit closer because we're going to be using it pretty soon. The first step, though, is going to be our wine. And what we are going to do is we're going to cook about a quarter cup of dry white wine, and it's going to reduce rapidly and absorb some into the risotto. It yields a delicious kind of sweet undertone to the risotto. Okay, just going to turn the heat up a little bit. Perfect. Make sure you're giving it a good stir. I'm still back down to medium. And what the heck, we're going to do a little bit more. People will ask what type of wine to use. Basically, you just want to use a dry wine. You don't want something that's too sweet. And you also want to make sure that it's something that you would want to drink. Don't cook with very expensive wine, but also don't cook with very cheap wine. At the end of the day, you are consuming it, so make sure it's something that's reasonable. Now we're going to be adding, I'm just going to do about like a ladle full at a time of our chicken stock, and we're just going to keep stirring and let this cook down. We're essentially creating a type of a rice porridge, but we need the sauce to be thickened by the starches that are in this very starchy short grain rice. Arborio is probably the most common rice that's used in risotto, although there's a handful of other ones that are more unique to Italy that you'll find. Arborio is the one that you're probably most likely going to find in your supermarket, though. Once the rice is absorbed most of the stock, we're just going to add another ladle and start the process all over again. I think you should always cook for those that you love, but you must make sure that you really love the people that you are cooking risotto for, because it is a labor of love. It can be pretty monotonous and time consuming, but put your heart in the right place, stick with it, and it yields fantastic results. We're 22 minutes into making our risotto, and this is about the consistency that we're looking for. We want it wet, but not runny. We also want the rice to be al dente, so have a little bit of a bite. We don't want to make this into mush. Risotto is looking good. For our eagle-eye viewers, you remember that we needed to cook the asparagus and the shrimp. So I'm warming up this pan. We're going to do that. Before we cook it, though, and while that's heating up, we're going to add the last two ingredients to the risotto, which is a good amount of butter and a quarter cup of Parmesan cheese. We're going to mix this in, and since that cheese is quite salty, and make sure that you're using unsalted butter, we'll then now taste and season accordingly with salt and pepper. And while that's setting, let's go over to this pan. So for this simple risotto, this traditional risotto, I have this cast iron skillet here. I'm going to pour some olive oil in it for the asparagus. And I'm just going to throw in some of the asparagus, and we're just going to cook this off quickly. Maybe a little bit of salt and pepper, but we're not going to get too complicated with this. We have a very simple risotto dish, and we want to pair it with some excellent ingredients. The asparagus looks great. We've been building some flavor in this pan now with that asparagus, so I don't want to wipe that out. In fact, let's get wild. Let's just throw our shrimp straight into that ripping pan, followed by our sliced garlic, and then give it a heavy amount of butter to play around with. I'm gonna try and cook these as fast as we can. Our risotto is done. Okay, it's a crime to overcook shrimp. I don't want to be guilty today. So these are done. Okay, it's time to plate. And we do want to serve this right away. I'm going to kind of create a little mound with mine. And it can be a little more runny than this with the gravy. It's set maybe a little too long as we were cooking everything else, but you know what? It's fine. It's gonna be delicious either way. But if yours is a little more runny than this, then that's great. Let's add some shrimp to this. Well, let's do 5, and we got little pieces of that cooked down garlic in there. And then how about some of these asparagus? For good measure, we'll add just a little bit of parsley. Why not? We have it. A little bit of rosemary. Just gonna crack a little bit of black pepper over the top of it. And there you have it. One of my favorite dishes to make, risotto. We finish it off with some pan-seared asparagus and shrimp. Just a little bit of pan-seared garlic in there too. It's such a wonderful dish for you and your family. It can feed a crowd, it can feed just yourself. It's a great recipe to use that last bit of stock that you may have laying around in your fridge. I hope that you give it a try. It is a delicious dish. It was my favorite thing to make whenever I was first getting into cooking, and it kind of sets the stage for you to open up a culinary palette that you might not be familiar with. It is a labor of love, so stick with it. Don't give up, never surrender, keep fighting, and you'll get wonderful results. I'm gonna dive into this. I hope to see you guys next time though, and please let me know if you give it a try down in the comments below. Take good care everybody, and happy cooking.